Once you have that platinum status, you're going to get extra qualifying miles every time you pay for a flight. And so if you're just redeeming points for mileage tickets, you're not really going to get the full value out of having platinum status. Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric, checking in from Grand Ledge, Michigan with AJ in Detroit. And today we're going to talk about some of the redemptions that we closed up this week and kind of walk you guys through the strategy and some of the alternatives that we considered. We've also got some news and updates to cover, and you're going to find show notes at abroaders.com/redemptions. How's it going, AJ?
Not too shabby, man. Other than Detroit, man, things are a little bit blue over here. The Tigers, as you probably know, have just been the biggest cowards, man. The team is not looking good. Looks like they might actually gut the team and just start rebuilding for the future. When to start this year, they were considered a top World Series contender, so that's kind of annoying as a baseball fan. But as far as real problems or anything, all is well over here.
That's good to hear, man. I actually have kind of tuned out the last couple of weeks. Especially this last week, I was pretty much without any Wi-Fi. I was basically able to get a text message out every 3 or 4 hours if I went out to the far extreme corner of the porch. So it's good. Got some really good content going, and looking forward to sharing some of the blog posts and photos that I've put together with everybody. But I've been isolated from the happenings of the real world a little bit.
Yeah, it's not always a bad thing. I mean, most of this stuff is complete garbage or propaganda in some way, shape, or form. So getting off the grid can be good for the brain.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, and I did get right back on the grid and check out everything that I could find related to news and updates in the travel hacking world. So we've got a couple of good things to cover for you guys. The first thing I wanted to mention, this is kind of an elite offering, but could definitely be a good fit for the right listeners out there. So the Founders Card is launching an American Airlines Elite Status Challenge. And so the Founders Card is one of those super elite premium credit cards that offers lounge access and a lot of benefits, and in particular offers some elite status with a couple of different programs, or at least shortcuts to get there. And this limited time offer is pretty attractive if you are looking to acquire Platinum status with American Airlines. So Platinum is the second tier status right under Executive Platinum, but there's some big benefits. You get priority boardings, you get a bunch of upgrade certificates, and usually it takes 50,000 miles to get to elite status at the Platinum level. And if you sign up for this Founders Card, they are offering an exclusive 10,000 mile challenge. And so the way that these status challenges work is, instead of spending an entire year and getting to 50,000 elite qualifying miles with American, you get a shortened period of time of just 3 months. But instead of 50,000 miles, you only have to fly 10,000 miles. So it's much, much easier, especially if you have some travel coming up. And it was actually something I considered. I've got a flight to Medellin, Colombia that AJ is going to be joining me on in a few weeks here. And that flight, now going from Detroit to Medellin, if you go the rational, normal way, isn't going to get you even close to 10,000 miles. But if you route that flight through Los Angeles or something on the West Coast on the way there, it's definitely possible to get the full 10,000 miles in one flight. And typically, having that routing doesn't really increase your price that much. So I was looking at maybe $600 to get to Medellin the logical way, and maybe $700 or $800 to get there through Los Angeles, which would get me enough points. I think I'm going to pass on this one. I'm trying to hold off on any applications, and I'm not totally sure I'd get approved for the Founders Card. But if you're in a position where you spend quite a bit on credit cards, this could be a really good offer, especially if you're planning some travel with American Airlines in the near future.
Eric, would you say there's any feasible way this card could be of value to somebody that flies exclusively or nearly exclusively on points and just continuing to churn cards and optimize spend a little bit? Or is this a card that you really need to buy some flights here and there to reap the rewards?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, you definitely need to buy flights to get the rewards, especially with your platinum status with American. Those elite status benefits generally are just going to apply to revenue tickets. And a lot of the point of getting status in the first place is to make it easier to maintain. So once you have that platinum status, you're going to get extra qualifying miles every time you pay for a flight. And so if you're just redeeming points for mileage tickets, you're not really going to get the full value out of having platinum status. You'll still get like lounge access and a few other small things, but the real goal here, if you're going to go for this, should be to get platinum status now. The bonus challenge or the platinum status challenge is going to give you status all the way through the end of 2016. So that's a really good value in itself. But big key is that starting January 1, it makes it a lot easier to requalify. Number one, because you're going to earn those extra elite qualifying miles. And number two, because flying is going to be a lot more fun when you're getting upgraded to business or first class on all those domestic flights. So in other words, if you're buying, round trips from New York to LA, or you're already traveling a lot on routes American covers, you're going to be flying in first class domestically pretty much all the time on American. And you're going to be, so you're going to cover those miles and be able to credit those flights and get the points. But yeah, if you're just doing the miles thing like you and I are, probably not the best deal, especially with a $400 annual fee for the card.
That is a discount, though. So what you found was on the Points Guy, and there is a current promo code or something that waives that $95 membership initiation fee. Damn, how initiation fees and an annual fee. That's, I guess, really protecting somebody from canceling the card. I don't know. But so that's actually pretty good deal considering the normal offer as far as the annual fee, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, definitely less. And by the way, there's a ton of benefits with this card. We're going to link to a page that goes through the different Founders Card benefits, but you get a couple of different comped benefits. So like you get Hilton Honors Gold, which isn't really that valuable, but gets some small benefits. You got a challenge for the American Platinum, Cathay Pacific Silver, a couple of car rental ones. You get discounts on flights from JetBlue, American, and British Airways, bunch of hotel discounts, and some other business discounts like Apple products, I think 20% off. So, you can definitely make this work if you're spending a lot of money, but, a lot of the discounts with merchants are kind of targeted towards those high-end products. Most of the people that sign up for a card that, even if it's down to $300 or $400, anybody who's getting that card is probably a high earner. And so the benefits are kind of designed that way, it seems.
Yeah. Well, moving on into more news and updates is something pretty interesting that BA, as the British Airways that is, has gotten on with publicly talking about cracking down on throwaway ticketing. This is something we've kind of touched on before, but to give you an idea of what throwaway ticketing is, it's essentially not taking the last segment of your flight. So, for example, let's say you're trying to go from LA to Chicago and you look at the direct flights. LA to Chicago, say $600 or something like that, but LA to Detroit routing through Chicago is half the price. So you hop on the flight, you buy it for half the price, and you just don't get on that flight from Chicago to Detroit. And British Airways has come out and they say they're cracking down on that. And actually, Eric, I read in the comments of one of the boarding area blog posts that some people had personally had this happen to them, where they got caught doing throwaway ticketing, and they actually got essentially invoiced or charged for the original fare.
Yeah, so, and this is pretty specific right now. What BA has said is that they are looking at a very specific itinerary. Basically, if you're flying from London to Hong Kong and back, you're looking at close to 4,000 pounds as a round-trip airfare in business class. But if you fly from Frankfurt to Hong Kong, the airfare comes out to close to 1,000 pounds. So it's over 70%, 75% off if you just fly from Frankfurt. And so what people are doing is they're in London, they're positioning to Frankfurt with a cheap flight, and then they're flying Frankfurt to London, Hong Kong, and then their return is supposed to be Hong Kong, London, Frankfurt, and they're dropping that last segment. And so BA is threatening to charge them that 3,000 British pound difference. What most people seem to think is more likely to happen if people don't pay those invoices, which obviously is going to take some serious arm twisting. They don't think BA is probably going to go after people in court for those fees, because if they get denied by the judge and the judgment goes in the customer's favor, then BA sort of set a legal precedent that shows that you can't prosecute this. So it seems,
then they open up the
yeah, they really put themselves in a bad spot there. So what it looks like might happen is people that are caught doing this are going to lose all the miles they earned on that itinerary. And maybe in more serious situations, if they're repeat offenders or whatever, maybe get their British Airways loyalty accounts closed and forfeit all the miles in their accounts, which could be worth a lot more than $3,000 for some frequent flyers. So definitely be really careful with that. And just because hidden city ticketing, number one, it's not illegal, but the airlines can come after you. They can certainly take your points. And why not just continue that flight on to Frankfurt? You don't have to necessarily skip it. It's not the end of the world. If you're saving 4,000 pounds on your BA itinerary in business class, it's probably not the end of the world to take a short flight to Frankfurt and then fly back the next day or whatever. So that's a way to avoid any sort of hammer coming down on you for doing this, is just actually fly the flight you were supposed to. And a lot of times you can book that Frankfurt segment later, so you can have like a separate trip, like a weekend trip over to Frankfurt to drink some good beer, meet some cool German people. So it might not be the end of the world if you end up taking advantage of this and just fly the last leg of the segment.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Why not just position one more flight to protect all of your miles and possibly having to deal with a very big company?
Yeah, and very good low-cost carrier options. I was looking around. We're going to get into that in just a second with some of the itineraries we've recently booked here. But there's a lot of cheap flights in Europe. I mean, the low-cost carriers are dominating in the market. You can get from Frankfurt to London for less than $50 in most dates of the year if you're not booking right up before travel. And so, there's that option. And if paid flights don't look that good, there's a ton of options using Avios points to get back. You can do a one-way from Frankfurt to London on British Airways or on Air Berlin. So, tons of options to actually complete that itinerary if you end up in the unfortunate situation of being in Frankfurt when you don't want to be.
All right, man. You wanna jump into some of these itineraries booked and kind of break them down?
Yeah, so I had a big day today. Probably spent about 150,000 miles today, and also confirmed a couple itineraries that were on hold from a week ago. So we've got a few to go over, and the idea here, I just wanted to kind of talk through what we ended up booking, what the rules were that kind of established those flights and what we tried to do, and then any other alternative options that we looked at, just so you can kind of see how our logic went through and how we checked our work. And there is one redemption in here that I'm pretty ashamed of in terms of value for points. It was absolutely horrible, but I'm just in a spot where right now I don't have $800 to drop on the flights, so had to use a lot of points to cover the cost and save that money. But at least this should give you kind of a framework for how to think about upcoming trips and how to test out where you could go with different currencies and ultimately come to a decision about what the best combination is going to be.
Yeah, so what do you want to do? You want to start off with your first one, the ANA to Colombia?
Yeah, so this is actually one that ended up being a round trip from the U.S. to South America. We talked about this on a show either last week or 2 weeks ago, where I was looking at routing from the U.S. to Colombia and then onward to Europe. And it is technically possible to do that. But what happened is I ran into some limitations where you're only allowed 2 stops in each direction of travel. So my intended destination here is Budapest. And I was hoping to go from Detroit to Colombia, stop in Colombia for a month, and then head onward to Budapest. And it didn't work because there aren't any direct flights available really from the US to Medellin. There's one out of Miami and one out of Newark, but neither of those were available. And that was really the only way I was going to make it happen, because the only way to get from Medellin to Budapest is by stopping in either Lisbon or Panama City. And so you just really have to cut down on connections if you're going to make it work. And it didn't work out to do it that way. So I kind of scrapped the idea of stopping in Colombia on the way to Europe. Then I considered just using those ANA points to do US to Europe. And what I discovered there were extremely high taxes and fees. Detroit has a lot of service from Lufthansa, so that's one of the reasons. Lufthansa is pretty notorious for having bad fuel surcharges. And when I tried to price out a ticket from the US to Europe and back, it came out to over $800 in economy. So that was a no-go. What I ended up doing is US to Colombia and then an open jaw from Rio back to the US just in time for summer next year. And so the nice thing about ANA is that you can complete all of your travel on an itinerary within a year of the date of the first flight. So I was able to book this trip that you and I are going on together August 10th, and then my return from Rio is going to be at the very beginning of June. So that's just kind of when rainy season's setting in Brazil. Not the best time to be there. So I've got a trip home from Rio to the US that's going to be very useful next June. And I was able to do it, came out to $109 and 50,000 ANA miles. The ticket was going to cost about $1,035, so I ended up saving a little over $900, and it comes out to 1.85 cents per point, which is pretty average, a little bit low probably, since a lot of those points were transferred from Amex membership rewards. But considering Amex points generally have really high fuel surcharges, just their partners are not good on fuel. And so this was a pretty good deal, because if you can get away with using ANA to South America or within the Western Hemisphere, you're going to pay way less in fuel. So this turned out, I think, to be one I'm going to be pretty happy with. But just to review those change rules. So if I do decide I want to make a change, I just booked it today. So I've got 24 hours to do anything I want. I can cancel it, totally revamp the reservation and not pay anything. After that 24-hour window, the rules with ANA are that you can change the dates without any penalty, but you can't change the airlines and you can't change the route or the class of service. So in other words, if I get on this itinerary and decide that Rio to Detroit needs to move by a couple of days, let's say I want to move it up to May, I still have to route through Houston, and I have to do one direct flight on United from Rio to Houston and one direct flight on United from Houston to the US, both in economy. And so if I want to make any of those changes, I have to be able to find those dates, or I just have to throw away that other trip. So that's a big catch with ANA, and you want to be careful about that. The other way to do it is you can refund the whole ticket and start over, but you can't do that after travel commences. So after we leave for Medellin in August, I'm stuck with only being able to change the dates. But if before that I want to make a change, it's going to cost me just 3,000 miles. And the problem is I have to destroy the whole itinerary and reticket from scratch. So it's totally possible to lose some of the flights if you decide to cancel and rebook. So you got to be careful with that as well.
Yeah, that's really different to most programs as far as changing stuff and getting miles refunded.
Yeah, I like the, 3,000 miles is pretty fair compared to, paying $75 or $150 for a booking. But remember, most people don't have ANA points just naturally in their account. So you're going to have to move those from Amex membership rewards. The ones I transferred out on Sunday night came in on Tuesday afternoon. So it wasn't too long of a transfer time, but you got to be prepared for that as well. Overall, I think it's a pretty good policy for changes, but having to rebook the whole ticket definitely can screw up the itineraries. The one thing I would say though is the ANA people were phenomenal. By far the best phone experience I've ever had with an airline. This lady was on the phone for over an hour trying to find flights. She tried all these routings to get me to Europe. She was looking at all kinds of different stuff, really went above and beyond. And I know you have had this experience with United and American. If you ask for more than 3 different airports, they just stop trying and they're like, yeah, we can't find it. It's not there. And you can tell they're not looking anymore. And so
it's not a matter of them not being able to, it's a matter of them not wanting to.
Right. And so that requires you to call back and wait on hold for another 20 minutes to try a different agent. And that was just not the case. Not only did this lady spend a ton of time, she tried to hold the ticket for me, which ANA does not do. But an interesting sort of internal exception, she told me that, because we'd worked so hard on this, she was going to try and put a hold on it. And then Avianca canceled one of the flights about 3 hours later because they hadn't ticketed it yet. And so she called me back on my cell phone to tell me that one of the flights got canceled and wanted to know if I had figured anything else out with my itinerary and was ready to book. So I was able to use that opportunity. She called me. I didn't have to wait on hold and was able to book that round trip US to South America and back. So it worked out really well. I definitely feel very good about the experience with the ANA phone staff. Not necessarily the best system if you want to just do it by the website. That's still really hard to do. But overall, great customer service. And
you did the callback thing? So you opted to have them call you back as opposed to wait on hold?
No, they just called me back. She was like, hey, this is Carrie from ANA. I was trying to keep track of your itinerary after we talked, and I noticed Avianca canceled one of the flights that we've tried to hold. So I wanted to see if you wanted to give it another shot. So she just called me proactively without any request.
Oh man, that's nice. I was going to say, because I had a situation where I had a flight get canceled or something, and I was trying to contact, this is back when, before the U.S. Airways, American Airlines merger, and I was on hold, and they gave me an option to have them automatically call me back, and they never did. So I kind of lost my faith with that piece of technology that the airlines claimed to provide.
Yeah, it's a little bit hit or miss. I definitely use that when the wait's over 20 minutes, but definitely sometimes they don't call you, or if they do, they just try once, and if you don't pick up, you're out of luck, and you got to start the process over again. So one other alternative that we talked about, and this is kind of relevant to your ticket to Medellin, I was looking at some one-way flights, and there's some really good low-cost carriers out of Florida. If you leave Fort Lauderdale on Spirit or Miami, you can get there under $200. So
let's make sure we define what a good low-cost carrier is. Spirit, as far as offering an attractive price point, absolutely. As far as flying experience, not necessarily.
Probably the worst in the sky.
But yeah, that's an amazing international fare. And even from Detroit, and with Spirit and the low cost carriers, you do need to keep in mind that they are going to nickel and dime you. I think Spirit even charges you to carry a bag on, but still, I mean, it's really attractive. And when I was pricing stuff out, Spirit was from Detroit wasn't a whole lot more. It was maybe $270 or something. But then there's obviously some fees here and there, but super cheap considering.
So what did you end up booking now for this flight? I know you got one on hold. What do you have right now? What did the stats come out for your one way to South America?
Yeah, so the flight I had was 17.5, so 17,500 American Airlines miles, and that was $20.60 in taxes and fees. And the cost of that flight, had I actually paid for that flight, would have been over $600 by a little bit. I believe it was $609. Another nice thing about this is it's only one stop, where I believe. Actually, I think the Spirit flight was the only other one stop as well. But for all the other options, American Airlines actually came in at the lowest price for a one stop flight, I believe, at least on Kayak. So as far as the flight I'm actually on, that would have cost me $609. So saving $588. And that brings the CPP to 2.87. That is a little bit misleading because there were some cheaper options on, some other airlines. But
yeah, to have that all in price, though, is valuable. The other thing, though, to keep in mind, and this was something that I was looking for, because really I wanted to use some certificates. I use the Amex Platinum card, has that $200 airline credit, and so I have 4 of those $200 airline credits saved up, and you can get them every calendar year. So it's not based on your card member year. So for example, if you sign up for the Platinum card now, you can get that $200 credit, say in September, and then also get it in January. So that's $400. That's going to pretty much pay for your annual fee for the first year. And so we've had the Platinum card for the Abroaders business for 3.5 years now. So I've managed to get 4 of those upgrades or those coupons. And I just bought electronic gift cards basically with the Platinum card and got it rebated to our statement. So I'm sitting on these coupons that I really want to use on an American paid flight. And the problem here is that for a one way, it's just not a good deal. You can get a round trip for $700. So, that's another really nice thing about the miles. Now, you're probably planning a round trip, so we might end up actually running that reward redemption back and using those gift certificates to get the flight round trip, because that might be the best opportunity to use them. Otherwise, like my trip from Colombia to Europe, it's like $1,000 one way, and I don't have any intention of coming back from Europe to South America, so it just doesn't make sense to pay for a ticket like that.
Yeah, man, this really exposes how expensive one-way flights are in proportion to the cost of a round trip, and what an advantage it is to leverage using frequent flyer miles if you want more flexible travel, where you're just going to head somewhere and then head to another spot, or the really intense multi-destination stuff, as opposed to just head to a city and head back.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what the rest of these examples cover. So let's jump into the next one. So my ongoing flight from Medellin is going to be a direct flight via British Airways, and it's on Iberia. And so that one's direct Medellin to Madrid, Spain. And it was 25,000 Avios and $64. It was going to be, as I said, about $1,050. So it comes out to almost 4 cents per point. Really good redemption value for BA. And another nice thing is you can transfer all 4 of the major transferable currencies to BA. So you get to pick the one you want. I really value Ultimate Rewards because of their transferability to United. So I wanted to save those. I was able to transfer Amex points, which we have a lot more of, to British Airways to make that flight happen. But you can also transfer your thank you rewards or Starwood Preferred Guest points to British Airways. The only other big takeaway from this redemption is that I noticed it was about $70 more expensive if you book via Iberia's website than if you book via BA. So the exact same flight, the exact same number of miles required, were going to cost $70 more in taxes and fees had I transferred Amex to Iberia. That's something to keep in mind. A lot of times it's the opposite, and British Airways points are going to be more expensive in taxes and fees than it is to do it via Iberia. So
is that an Iberia specific thing where they just have a $70 booking fee for awards on their website?
I don't think so. I think it's just a difference in the way that they charge fuel on the redemption. I'm really not sure what breaks out. But I mean, the key thing is that often it's the other way, where if you fly on an Iberia flight, you can save a lot in taxes and fees by booking through Iberia's website instead of through British Airways. The only restriction there is Iberia is only a transfer partner of Amex membership rewards. So you can't use the other transferable currencies if you want to go through Iberia's site. In my case, it made more sense to go through the British Airways site. And frankly, that website, although not far from great, is way better than Iberia's. So it was a little bit more pleasant booking experience. Only took a couple of minutes to get that one squared away. Amex transfers instantly to BA, as do all the other currencies except Starwood. There's a little bit of a delay. So I was literally able to find the ticket and then go log into our Amex account, make that 25,000 point transfer, and book the ticket while it was still sitting on the screen under reservation.
And man, that's a great redemption, considering South America to Europe is almost always more than the United States to Europe.
Yeah, and that was the case. That's actually why I didn't go with ANA from South America to Europe. The other plan was to take that cram Spirit Air flight from Detroit and, eat the $200 or whatever, get to Medellin, and then book a round trip from South America to Europe. But that was going to be 60,000 points, which meant I was going to have to transfer more ANA miles, which meant I was going to have to wait another couple of days. And really, I didn't have a lot of interest in returning from Europe to Colombia, which is what would be required with ANA's rules. You got to go back to the country of origin. So that was, the open jaw. It's interesting because in Europe, you can do an open jaw from one country to another and come back, but you got to come back to the original country. So it was 60,000 miles. It was just going to be a bad deal. The other option I considered was Flying Blue. Air France Flying Blue has these promo awards, which we've definitely talked about on other shows. And those basically are discounts of either 25 or 50% on the normal cost of redemptions. And so in this case, there was a 25% discount on flights from Bogota to anywhere in Europe. And so the bottom price could be as low as 26,500 points, but I just wasn't able to find any of those. The only ones I could get were about 40,000. So it looks like the promo awards just got sold out. They have a limited quantity of those. And, ultimately I would have had to get Amex points to transfer, and it was still going to be, 1.5 more, even if I found that bottom price. 26,000 still more than 25. So British Airways turned out to be by far the best option there. And also cheaper with taxes and fees. Flying Blue, typically you're running about $150 instead of $60. So good deal all around there.
Yeah, job well done. 3.9 is a hot redemption.
Yeah, gotta cancel out this bad one we're going to cover in a second here. One more thing to mention with respect to Amex transfers that I rediscovered today. You have to link your account first before you can transfer, and the linking process is not instant. So even with programs like British Airways, where Amex can transfer points in real time, you still have to approve the transfer through Amex, and then they send that information to the frequent flyer program to confirm your identity. So what I actually discovered today when I was looking at Flying Blue is that for whatever reason, I've never linked my Flying Blue account to our Amex. And so I was going to have to wait up to 2 weeks for the link to be established. Transfers are instant, but you got to wait for the link to establish first. So once you have your Amex account set up and you've got some ultimate rewards, you should link your account to every frequent flyer program you think you're going to use right away, so you don't have to run into that scenario when you actually go to transfer miles and find out you're going to have to wait weeks when you know the ticket's available.
Yeah, that's a big point. I honestly did not know that.
Yeah, good to be aware of. I don't think we've run into that much with our bookings, because usually we get those links established as soon as we start the research, but definitely important if you're doing it on your own. Make sure you get those linked up before you start. Okay, so the next one is a itinerary that I had to book for my girlfriend Gabrielle is going to be coming out to Europe, and this one's from Salvador to Budapest. And South America to Europe can be pretty tricky, both in terms of availability, but also this one had an added challenge because she doesn't have a U.S. visa, and so there was no option to route through the US. And if you look at like Delta and a lot of the American-based frequent flyer programs, even though they do let you get to the US or get to Europe from South America, a lot of them are going to transit in Miami or New York or Chicago. And so that was just not an option for her. And I ended up finding a really nice itinerary with United Miles that's going to go from Salvador to Lisbon, and then from Lisbon to Budapest, pretty direct routing. And the paid itinerary was over $1,500. So that one came out to $1,440 savings and about 3.03 cents per point. Total mileage was 47,500, which compared to the other programs is still a pretty good deal. It's way more expensive than the US to Europe, but if you're already in South America, it's definitely cheaper than flying back to the US and then doing US to Europe on a separate itinerary.
Nice, man. Are you ready to get into this next redemption?
I am. Unfortunately, so this one, we're leaving Budapest around the 13th of October. And I looked all over for ways to use miles. The paid ticket cost came out to $393 a person, but it's for two of us. So, looking at that price, I just couldn't sustain $800 for this flight. It was going to take a big chunk out of money that we had to spend in Asia. And as you know, AJ, $800 goes a very long way in Bangkok.
It's like a month of living well in Asia.
Yeah, that's a month of living in a fully serviced apartment, having people bring you meals 3 times a day. So, long story short, just wasn't sustainable to do that with cash. Probably what I would have done if I had a little bit of extra money would have been to buy the flight direct from Qatar Airways at $400 a piece. I did look at a couple of other options. There's Air France promo awards from Europe to Bangkok, but that's off of premium economy, which is still $60,000 each way and just not a very good deal. There's business class flights that you can get for less than that premium economy price. And then there is currently a Air France promo award to Ho Chi Minh City that's 25% off economy. That's a little bit better deal than I paid with American Miles, comes in at 30,000 miles, but the taxes and fees with Air France are way higher than with American. So just really didn't make sense there. And so I ended up swallowing, and it came out to 0.94 cents per point. If you include the American Airlines rebate, and that's a little bit of a stretch, but I do get 10% back because I paid with my Barclays Aviator Red card.
I think you got to include that, man. You know the rules. You knew which card to use. I think you need to pat yourself on the back and at least accept, that 10% rebate, man.
Yeah,
you could have very easily used a different card.
Yeah, that's true. So use the right card. That 10% discount is a huge deal if you're going to be redeeming miles. So I got 7,000 American miles back for that redemption. Brings my cents per point up above the red line and over 1 cent per point. Still wouldn't advise anybody to follow my example there, but if you're cash strapped and you have enough points, it's a good way to facilitate some world travel.
Yeah, man, is the 1.0 mark kind of like the Mendoza line in baseball at a 200 batting average? Just anything under that is unacceptable?
Man. I mean, honestly, anything under 1.5, you can generally do better with cash back, So if you're thinking about it that way, in general, if you're only getting between 1 and 1.5 or even 1.7 cents per point, there's more flexible ways where you can use a cashback card and buy the flight, and then you're going to earn miles on the flight anyways. Or, like you talked about last week with the Citi Thank You Premier card, where you can get 1.6 towards AA redemptions. So anytime you're in that super low, under 1.5, you really want to reevaluate if you're doing that often. This is obviously just an outlier for us. Most of our redemptions come in above 4 cents per point. So we're doing really well on an overall strategy of using points for travel. But yeah, if you end up finding yourself in that 1.5 or less region, there's better options, and you'll end up thanking yourself when you don't have to spend hours on the phone with the frequent flyer mileage departments trying to get those tickets issued.
Yeah. Well, I know that was kind of tough for you to admit to the community that you redeemed a flight at such a low value, but I'm looking at the notes on this next one, and this is, if that last one was a strikeout, this one is most definitely a home run.
Yeah, absolutely. And this happens pretty much anytime you're going to book into business class. If you use the true cost of buying the ticket as your metric, you're going to do extremely well in cents per point. I tend to think that most people should evaluate how much they would actually pay for the business class ticket rather than how much it costs on the open market. But I'll give you the stats on this one, and then we can debate kind of what the real value should have come out to. But this was Taipei to Detroit, and this is a really nice itinerary because it's got a couple of stops. We're going to be visiting a friend in Taipei and then stopping for 24 hours in Hong Kong and then stopping for 22 hours in New York. So we've got a couple of extra cities that we can check out on there. The total cost of the flights came out to $3,454 a person. It's 2 people traveling, so savings overall is going to be over $3,300 a person, and comes out, if you just do the regular math, 6.12 cents per point. If you count that American Airlines rebate, I ended up only paying 99,000 miles instead of 110,000. So 6.8 cents per point if you count that rebate. Definitely a really solid redemption. But all that said, I probably would never pay more than $1,500. So, you should probably knock that down in terms of how you're evaluating your savings. If you never buy full fare business class tickets, it's not really fair.
Yeah, that's an interesting point to bring up where, maybe you're not at a point where you would spend $3,500 on a one-way plane ticket, but nonetheless, that is what you're getting, all because you wouldn't pay for it. It doesn't mean that's where the price is set and that's the experience you're having,
True. Totally true.
Like, what would be the economy for that? Probably around $1,000, over $1,000.
Yeah, it was at least $1,400 for economy one ways. And I think part of that is the routing. I mean, that's another really great thing about the way that the programs are structured. If you max it out and do those 23.5 or 24-hour stopovers, that, it can be worth a lot more in the sense that you get to see another city. We're going to spend a night in Hong Kong and a night in New York City. So that's definitely a big value add for me. At the end of the day, the value is the fact that we get from Asia to the US, and boy, that's, the Hong Kong to New York is a 16-hour flight. That is a brutal flight in economy. I've done it and I don't want to repeat it. And so,
Yeah, you essentially are getting an extra day of your life. You are now going to live a day longer, because you will not spend the day after that flight in economy in a coma, sleeping for 20 hours in a row.
And the other thing to keep in mind too with the savings evaluation is the flight in economy was still going to be like 35, I think. So it was only an extra 20,000 miles on top to get into business class. And that's a big deal. I mean, 20,000 miles is not much. There's not many programs anymore. Besides that epic flight that we've taken 12 times back and forth to Brazil in low season, there's not much you can do with 20,000 miles. I mean, that's, you could burn 20,000 miles really easily on a round trip in the US. In fact, it usually comes out to 25,000 with American. So, that's, my trade-off there was upgrade to business class and forego, a round trip from Detroit to Los Angeles. Yes, please. I will definitely take that trade-off.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And considering, I mean, if you're ever going to splurge for business class, the flight you listed is the exact time that you do it, man. 16 hours in the air. That is, I mean, even in business class, it's a long time because you're just, you can't go outside and go for a walk or anything. Like you're just, in the time capsule for almost a full day.
Comfort yourself with that Cathay Pacific liquor selection. That's really all you got. That's your only recourse.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I did the Taipei to JFK last year before having an overnight in New York and heading back to Detroit. And they told me how long the flight was, and I was comfortable, but I was in business class on EVA, but it's just a long ass time on a plane.
Yeah, it's crazy that you can, get 8 hours of sleep and wake up and still have like a full 8 hour work day ahead of you.
Yeah, I think as far as work, I took a nap. I drank like 10 glasses of wine. I watched a few movies, a little bit more work, took another nap, watched another movie, and then I was there.
Yeah, definitely goes a lot faster than it does for the folks riding in back.
Oh, hell yeah.
All right, so I think that's everything for the flights that we were going to cover today. We've already gone a little bit long. Do you have a jam for everybody? I liked the selection last week.
Yes, I do have a jam for everybody. The track is Can't Feel My Face. It is by The Weeknd. I believe it came out in June, and I picked this one because I've been playing around on Spotify's charts lately. It's pretty cool. So Spotify has charts, and they've got charts by country. They've got global charts, and this one is actually number 3 on the global chart right now. And I think how they come to the conclusion for where a song is on the chart is just by daily plays or average of daily plays. And so, like I said, Can't Feel My Face, The Weeknd, a Torontonian, as they claim, alternative R&B group. I think it's just kind of like really nice pop, but here it is. It's Can't Feel My Face, The Weeknd.
You give great descriptions, AJ.
Hey, thanks, man. I take pride in that.
See you guys next week.
Cheers.
I can feel my face when I'm with you, but I love it.
Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.
The worst is yet to come. All the misery was necessary when we're deep in love.